Hey, what's going on, Roleplayers? It's the Bard here and welcome back to the corner. So as a change for today, I'm actually helping someone with their character. I've been trying a way of the Shadow Monk with Fiend Warlock, currently Monk 6, Warlock 2. Could you please spin something on that? I wish I knew a few more details about your character. I think I could probably come up with a character concept. It would just would have been nice to have known something like your ability scores, how your character is playing, what race you are, what feats you have already, but it's not a big issue. I'm sure we can sort something out together. Right, let's have another quick look at this. Way of the Shadow with Fiend Warlock. This is harder than it sounds. What you've got is a monk that relies on stealth, multi-class with a warlock that really wants to be in the thick of it. Way of the Shadow has a lot of subtle sneaking abilities, so silence, darkness, pass without trace, that kind of thing. Fiend Patron, on the other hand, has Dark One's Blessing for the temporary hit points and things like Dark One's Own Luck for ability scores and saving throws, so they're very kind of in-combat abilities. So you've got two classes that are kind of playing against each other, but it doesn't mean that we can't make it work. I will make it work for you. So you're currently Monk 6 and Warlock 2. Now I'm going to be making a lot of assumptions in this, because this is the only information I have to go on. But I'm going to assume that you've gone Monk and now you're starting in Warlock. And in my opinion, I think you've done the right thing. I think you've stopped at level 6, which is probably the exact place you need to be as a monk. So you've got a Shadowdancer, and that's great. I love Shadowdancers. They're always existing in the place where light and darkness meet, and I think that wants to be your primary focus for this character. The part that really caught my eye was the concept of being a super rogue, and I think that's something that you can really kind of play on a lot when you go Warlock, but there are a few different parts that you'll need specifically in order to make that happen. Since you've got enough levels of Monk, you want to concentrate on your Warlock from now on, at least in my opinion anyway. At level 3 you should get Pact to the Blade, because when you get to level 5 you'll then be able to pick up Eldritch Smite. Eldritch Smite is good enough on its own, but Eldritch Smite combined with Shadow Step is absolutely godlike. 1d8 force damage plus an additional 1d8 force damage per level of spell slot is really huge, but having advantage on that roll after a Shadow Step is just brilliant. I would be quite surprised if anything could stand up to that amount of damage, but even if it could, you still get to knock the creature down prone, and there's no save against it, as long as it's huge or smaller. So that means you get another attack against it, because you're a monk, you have extra attack, and then you can spend a Kai point to get 2 bonus attacks against it. Because it's prone, all those attacks also have advantage. I really think you should keep your Warlock progression going as well after that, because Ghostly Gaze is an amazing Eldritch invocation. Not only are you going to get high level spell slots, which means of course high level spells, it means higher level smiting, but Ghostly Gaze is incredible when you combine it again with Shadow Step. Ghostly Gaze and Shadow Step make you an insane infiltrator. So many spells and abilities require you to be able to see what it is that you're doing in order to affect a creature or target. However, with Ghostly Gaze you get what is essentially an X-ray vision. This is great because you can get into a room that is completely sealed as long as there's some dim light in there. But if it's a completely sealed room, there's bound to be dim light somewhere that you can Shadow Step into. One tactic you could use is if you've got a target that you can't get to, Ghostly Gaze through the walls, Shadow Step in behind them, then Eldritch Smite the creature when you're ready, steal its key and walk out through the front door. I think going Fiend perhaps hurts you a little bit. Everything's playing against type, it's big, it's flashy. Some spells on your expanded spell list seem like a good idea at the time. Fire Shield is a prime example. It doesn't do as much damage as Armor of Agathis at the same spell slot level, and I think I would rather have the temporary hit points over the resistance to energy damage, because they're much more versatile in general combat. Worst of all, Fire Shield gimps out your Shadow Step. Because you're surrounded in light, you can't use your ability to go from one dim light to another, because you're always going to be in bright light. There is one absolute jewel in the expanded spell list for the Fiend Patron though, and it's Blindness Deafness. Blindness can be an absolutely devastating condition to be subject to. Now, Hold Person might seem like the strongest spell, however there are tons and tons of restrictions in Hold Person. First of all, it has to be a humanoid, and second of all, there's a concentration duration. But Blindness Deafness doesn't worry about any of that. It affects all kinds of creatures, and it's 1 minute duration. You don't have to concentrate on it. This makes it an amazing spell. This spell actually has been buffed since the previous editions, in my opinion, and at higher levels you can target more creatures. You get up to 5th level slots as a Warlock. you can cast this and affect 4 different creatures at the same time. Blindness Deafness is not only a great combat spell, it's also really good for utility, because if you have a party who is useless at stealth, then it doesn't make any difference, because you can cast blindness on the targets, making them completely blind, and then you can use your shadow arts to create a zone of silence, so you have your enemy in complete sensory deprivation as you and your party just slink on past them. Even though you're packed to the blade, I still think you should have Shadow Blade in your list, because it adds a lot more versatility, and being able to throw the weapon as well, having a ranged attack, is absolutely awesome. So if you throw it, at least you can still keep smiting things with your packed weapon, and you can call it back to you as a bonus action anytime you need to. Eldritch Smite is really good for your stealth attacks, whereas you want something like Shadow Blade for bigger mass combats. So you'll be able to swing it multiple times because you have extra attack. So of course the weapon is finesse as well. You're considered to have dexterity based attack rolls if you so desire. So of course you get your best attacks and you get your additional ability to score damage. But more importantly, you get advantage when you're in dim light. But you're a Shadowdancer. When are you not going to be in dim light? Sometimes you just don't need to be subtle and you just need to clear out the trash, so having something like Fireball on hand is always useful for a nice area effective damage. If you actually look at the Warlock spell list, you'll see that in many cases it is lacking in some very decent area of effect spells, so a good solid blast of Fireball can be just what the doctor ordered. Also, never forget that Fireball also ignites unattended flammables, so that's always something to keep in mind. Your Fiend patron also offers you Wall of Fire. Check the wording on the spell. You don't actually need line of effect or line of sight in order to put up a wall of fire. So if you've been shadow stepping around, or if you've been using your ghostly gaze and you've found creatures or targets to use your wall of fire against, you can easily cast it from safety. You know just how far to cast the spell to make sure those creatures get caught in it, while you do it from the relative safety of another room or some area that they can't see you from. And I think that's us pretty much done. These are like the best synergies I can find between the classes, because the two are, again, as I've said before, they kind of naturally want to play against each other, but they are quite useful in and of themselves, and there are little compound effects that you can do to make your character more effective, so hopefully that's been of some use for you. When it comes to things like feats and stuff, you're not actually reliant on anything. Skulker is probably one of the best choices because it allows you to hide even when you're lightly obscured, and the fact that you're in dim light won't impose disadvantage on your wisdom perception checks, and considering you're a Shadowdancer, you want to be in dim light all the time, so it's probably one of the better feats for you to consider taking. If you're planning on using Shadow Blade a lot, you might want to consider Savage Attacker. Once per round you can re-roll the damage dice for the weapon. Now normally this isn't an amazing ability, but considering it's Shadow Blade and you can get like 4d8 out of it at the highest level Warlock slot, that's a pretty good, set of re-rolls you've got right there. Both Lucky and Alert are amazingly functional feats that everyone really enjoys having. Sentinel is also a strong feat, allowing you to get reaction attacks against certain creatures when they provoke an attack of opportunity, and being able to reduce their speed makes your assassination jobs that much easier, because the targets won't be getting away from you. So it's been a little bit odd working on a character that's already established, and especially one that's already so advanced. I mean, you're already level 8. So I do find it a bit odd, but at the same time it has been a lot of fun, and making these two competing classes work together and find a method that will actually help them to complement their abilities has actually been quite the challenge. But I'm always up for a challenge, and I'm always up for helping the subscribers. So if you want to share ideas, if you want to collaborate on a character, if you want me to create new builds or anything you could possibly want, put it in the comments and I will do those things for you. If you like these videos, be sure to leave a like, and if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so. Help our community grow and we can share even more ideas together. And with that being said, I will catch you guys next time at the gaming table.